Hello and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast week in mobile games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz, and with me this week we have a special guest. It's the big man himself, Steel Media CEO Chris James. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. I'm actually honoured to be here. I've wanted to be on this ever since it started. I think you've never let me on, so I'm basically, because people are away, you couldn't hold me off any longer. So I'm here to tell it like it is, Craig. I'm going to be giving you kind of straight cuts, no nonsense.
Looking forward to it. There was a long list. I got through all of those.
Yeah, exactly.
I had to start a new one.
Wasn't available, so I'm here. That's great. But yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been following the cast, and it's, still early days, but it's growing nicely. So good job.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. So what have you been up to, Chris? What's happening?
Lots of things. I mean, as you know, we do lots of events. So running this company this year is going to be more interesting than usual. We've got a lot of events going on. So I've been out to Barcelona recently ahead of our recently announced Barcelona event. Very excited about that. Love Barcelona, me. Planning stuff in Asia this summer as well. Dubai coming up. We're going to be hitting four continents. I don't know how it all works, but we're going to be from London to San Francisco, to Dubai, to Barcelona in like 4 months. So that's going to be fun. How hard can that be? And then of course we're kind of back for Gamescom in August, I think. Is that right?
Charlie, who puts together the speakers for the events, I'm sure is pulling his hair out. Very happy.
He hasn't got much hair, so we're fine. It's okay.
When he started, he had a forehead.
Well, I know it
right down to here.
It's like being president, isn't it? Being in charge of events, just like one of those things that ages you immediately. But yeah, no, it's fine. But no, I'm busy. There's a lot going on. I mean, it's been a very exciting. I'm sure we'll talk about a very exciting start to the year. London with PGC with London was brilliant. Big love to when it came out. You were fabulous. Like, I still haven't written my follow-up post really to thank everybody massively. Meant to do, but it's now end of February, so a month later. But now it's an incredible start to the year, and there's a real feeling of positivity about the start of the year, and I think there still is. Which, after the last 18 months of tough news, is welcome. But I know there are still plenty of challenges, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of those. But I'm feeling pretty pumped at the moment and excited about 2025. We've survived till 2025, and now we need to thrive in 2025. That's my vibe.
That's the new saying. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's been like we'll talk about it in a bit. Like, there's been some good news, but there's also obviously been bad news, more layoffs, etc. Especially not mobile, but the Warner Brothers stuff was pretty devastating, to say the least. As for myself, I mean, work-wise, I've got a few events coming. I've got GDC, Gamescom, Latam going to, and then obviously our other events, Dubai, straight after Gamescom, Latam. I think I have a few hours.
You're hitting another continent. That's pretty impressive.
Flying back.
I'm not getting to that one. I feel a bit, but I've never been to South America. I've been invited hundreds of times and never been. So, and I'm jealous of that one. So that's cool.
And then outside of work, I don't really have much of a life. Not been up to too much, but I did watch A Quiet Place Day 1, which was actually very good, I thought.
I watched that on a plane. My family told me, "Oh, you like this?" They know I don't like horror-y things, and it's, "Oh, you like this? It's really quite funny." And I was like waiting for it to get funny, and at no point did it get funny. It was quite good, but it's quite good, but it was a bit sad, wasn't it? The whole thing. I didn't know it was about my regular life. I was just talking about work. I've been doing my other business. I had football. I was at Stockley Park the other day doing helping out with not the VAR, but helping out with the details for the fantasy football. I went to Brentford last night to watch Everton draw against Brentford.
Nice.
Doing lots of things in my real world, but yeah.
Chris does fantasy football. Runs a fantasy football scout.
Part of the enthusiast empire these days, yeah. But yeah, that's if you do like fantasy football, check out fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. Plugs.
Right, so I guess let's get into it. A few shout outs. We've got events. We got another event as well. Pocket Gamer Connect San Francisco, March 17th to 18th. Dubai Game Expo Summit by PGC, May 7th to 8th. We go to Barcelona, June 3rd to 4th. We've got Shanghai now, the summit, July 30th. Helsinki's coming at you on October 7th and 8th. Was that it? Oh, no, we've got Jordan.
There is more to come. We're going to be hitting Southeast Asia as well. But there's a bit of a kink in the plan, so we're working out exactly where, but we will be there late in the year and maybe back in the Middle East as well. We'll be back in Jordan, in November, not the announced date yet. And we might be somewhere else in the Middle East as well. So we've got at least that, and then there's obviously Mobile Games Awards and parties at Gamescom, all sorts going on, right? There's a party at Pocket Gamer, a party in GDC as well, which anybody can come to.
Put a link in the description below. So let's jump straight into the news. I have a few things to say. My notes always look terrifying, by the way, Chris. I write loads of notes. And then,
I'm not reading your notes, Craig. I'm not.
It's all up here. So so far the big news of the week, so we're recording on Thursday, was the headline I put was AppLovin labels short seller reports nefarious and misleading as shares sink. So the short sellers are at it again, I guess. They tried to do it to a different research firm, tried to do it to Roblox, but it didn't really go very well. And actually, that company, Hindenburg, is now closed. So it really didn't go very well.
Who comes up with Hindenburg? You want to say it was destined for failure, right? Like, so you've decided to name your business the Hindenburg. Okay. Yes. And were you relaunching as Titanic? What are you doing? It's mental.
This time it was the ridiculously known, perhaps, Fuzzy Panda Research and then Culper Research. They released reports on the same day, so I guess there was some potentially collusion there. They threw out a number of accusations about AppLovin's business practices. So obviously AppLovin has been killing it in its financials, becoming a leader in the ad space, has a market cap of 10 times what Unity is now, would you believe, after all that fuss years ago about one of them merging with IronSource. The claims against AppLovin includes potentially inflating its metrics. It also cited a class action lawsuit against AppLovin of tracking users without their consent and apparently getting data on children as one of the claims. They also make a series of other allegations. What I found interesting was some of those claims were just unproven, citing a lawsuit where the case isn't actually over. And it's also worth pointing out that there's been some user acquisition experts in games on social media kind of panning those reports in their opinion, saying it kind of has little knowledge of games.
Exactly. I've been following this on the social media more than the original story. I did read the story briefly, but I think you can see all of the kind of most respected or certainly most vocal sort of UA and monetization experts, advertising people are pretty much panning this whole story as a non-story and taking it apart line by line. And the people I really respect, like the guy Matei from the 2.5 Gamers and obviously Eric and others and Safert and others, and they've all just pointed out that some of these things that sound awful if you're not in the ads, already in the industry, and you don't, are actually just kind of pretty standard practice, and other things are not really likely to be true. Like how would Google and Apple not notice that this company is the biggest ad provider in this entire space, and for it to be running roughshod of all their policies and it not to be noticed is not traditionally something that Apple lets go. Right? So it's not like this needs to be debated and I guess challenged and whatever, and proven otherwise. But some of the claims just seem unlikely. One of the interesting things I read somewhere else is what a commentator on LinkedIn was saying, that rather than this being a case about AppLovin, what this might be is a kind of a bit of a showing the working, a bit of a case about the state of advertising generally. Like some of the things that are put out about kind of like deceitful advertising where accidentally, you click the X, it doesn't go anywhere. The ads are like dodgy, you can't really get out of the ad loop, and you somehow end up accidentally downloading something when you don't think you are. These are practices that just do go on in mobile games advertising, and there are, there's obviously misleading ads as one thing, but these circular ad things where you've got timers and then a link and then another menu and another menu, there's been a lot of pretty sharp practices in that UA world. Now, I don't think any of them necessarily are as far as saying illegal, but they're definitely kind of, questionable in some cases. And I think our AppLovin somehow part of the ecosystem 100%, but they're not, it's not like they're doing things that other people aren't. Is kind of the case this guy was making. He's more saying, well, this is a time to look at these practices in general rather than just putting on AppLovin. So I find it interesting. There's two things for me. One is that surely the legal exposure that these Culper Research and Fuzzy Panda have with this, surely they must be opening themselves up to some sort of lawsuit if this isn't true, because it's a very public claim, and as you say, it's had a massive impact on the share price.
Down about 20%.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was down 12.5% or something yesterday after a bit of a return. Surely that seems like a very rash thing to do. I mean, maybe these maybe in the modern post-truth world, you can say what you like. That feels like, kind of questionable. And then I don't know. It's interesting. This has moved the markets. Whether this kind of opens up more of this sort of shenanigans is the question I'd ask. Is like, because clearly, yeah, if they are short sellers, they've got an agenda. It's not like they're coming into this, then they're looking for the price to go down. And the price has gone a long way. I mean, the price has been insane. Like they've gone up, these shares in the last year, like 446% up. I know people in the industry that were in favour of them. They had a massive, massive leap in November when they announced some results, and then another one around the results in the 11th, around the mid-February again, and a huge, huge leaps up. And now you're going from trading around $70 to around, 330. Even now, they're up to 510 at one point. Obviously, they've dropped down a bit since then. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's a massive story, but I don't know where it goes yet. That's the thing. What's the next thing?
Like, it's a massive story just because of the way it's moved the shares, and not necessarily like the veracity of the allegations. And ultimately, in the Culper research report, right at the start has a disclaimer, and it basically just says, we'll do this, but we won't necessarily take our own advice. We will immediately sell, and we could buy shares after that. So to capture it going back up, it kind of like they're revealing.
This is our game plan. Is we're going to smash it down and buy some shares.
Well, yeah. It's all. I don't know their thoughts, but it feels like it's like, oh, we've missed this massive rise. Kind of to your point, let's capture these concerns about the ad space, which some are legit, and then we can tank this and then capture it on the way back up.
I saw Adam come out, didn't he? Adam Ferogi, who's CEO, and he's not averse to speaking his mind on things, right? So he kind of came out. I haven't read it all yet, but he was actually quite restrained, and I guess that's from a market and legal perspective, that's what he has to be. But he was just kind of questioning the veracity of some of the key points, wasn't he?
He actually went through a few of the points, but yeah, in the end, he just says, nefarious, called it littered with inaccuracies and false assertions. He said, claims of financial and accounting impropriety are factually incorrect and have no basis whatsoever. He said, we don't track like children's data, etc. So he kind of went through a few of the key points, not just a blanket, this is all wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see where that goes.
His last statement, it's also noteworthy that the short reports emerged after our earnings report, where we would be in a period of being unable to respond regarding financial performance.
Yeah.
So
notable. But the one thing I will say to finish is that actually, I think for years, specifically when these ad firms had publishing arms, that publishers were actually very concerned about how their data is accessed and kind of competition. Yeah. I remember with IronSource, one publisher said to me, well, we just dropped them as the ads company because like they're a competitor basically. So there have been like other concerns around these. Obviously, AppLovin's getting rid of their publishing.
Yeah, AppLovin's selling all its studios, right? That's like $1 billion deal.
So, but yeah, we'll see how those go. I'm not sure there's too much veracity, but we'll see. I think the children's data stuff will probably get investigated just because.
I find it amazing it wouldn't get picked up. I mean, as you say, at one point it was down 20%. At the moment, over the last 5 days, it's down 12%. Notably, Unity software stock is up 3.3% over the same time.
Well, they got Vector.
I'm not like at all. There's no. I'm not drawing anything from that. I'm just saying it's a thing that's happened. So,
but they've got a ways to go to match.
I mean, I think I don't think that's going to be troubling the overall valuation just yet.
Right, so we'll move on to the next item. I wanted to point out that I feel like we've been reporting on a lot of new studios and funding stories lately, which seems like, obviously there's still the layoff stuff we discussed earlier, and this week the big Warner Brothers news. But there's been actually, it feels like there's been some good news. It could just be I'm a bit biased towards, I've seen these, and it's sort of a recency thing. But yeah, some top stories, I guess. Finnish startups, 7 Stars secures seed round to build next-gen puzzle games. Good Job Games secures investments from Menlo Ventures. Studio Surpass Games secured $1.5 million to redefine the hybrid casual puzzle genre. I feel like that's always everyone wants to redefine hybrid casual. People Core secured $500,000 funding to bring tabletop games to digital platforms. A Little Umbrella, $2 million. Spoils raised investment. Playable Factory. There's a new studio from ex-Belka staff, including the ex-Belka CEO, Studio 42, new Barcelona studio, obviously where we're going for PGC, Lodestar, And then really quickly, Grand Games last month raised 30 million. Dream Games apparently is looking for a big investment round. It seems like there's a lot going on in terms of new studios. And then obviously there's big acquisitions. Like there seems to be musical chairs from the acquisitions the last few years. Play Area has been sold. Some other deals like that. Obviously there's a lot of Amina investments. Saudi Social Development Bank backs esports and game development, 122 mil. Skills has announced a $75 million developer accelerator. Loads going on. I'm curious to see kind of the Drake Star Parks reports and Convoy Ventures, what they have to say about the quarter and if that is actually a bigger trend. I think investments kind of slowly been going up over the past year.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking at because I do these little introductions with the kind of trends of the market and stuff for every other PGC. So do come and see the start of the show. You're coming and you get to see me. There's also some hilarious Photoshop work on PowerPoint. But I have been looking at it, and it does feel my perception is that the activity has grown, and there's two types really. There's kind of earlier stage funding is definitely a thing again, but that doesn't have to be just angels and super angels. Really, it's certainly it's not just a few 100,000 here and there. It is up to a couple of million. There's quite a lot of those stories going around, as you've highlighted some of them there. So that early stage, whether that's seed or pre-seed or very early Series A, I don't know. But that sort of level, there seems to be a lot of excitement again. And obviously, a lot of people got laid off, and those people are starting new things. And there's a lot of capital sat in investment funds that needs to be deployed as well. Angels have been pretty active throughout the whole kind of, investment recession, I guess. Then at the top level, you see kind of huge acquisition stories. Obviously, we've got the Niantic one. I don't know if that was last week. You covered that, was in here later on. But that going through, potentially by Scopely stroke Savvy stroke PIF, whatever entity it goes through. And there's the $1 billion of stuff going from AppLovin that'll be coming through soon to someone. We don't know who that is yet. And and as you say, there's things like Plarium moving around. And those are acquisitions. So there's a lot of that, and then there's a lot of investment. What we haven't seen, and where the grumbles I hear are coming, is the investment in the middle, like the A's, the B's, the C's round. And obviously Dream Games is kind of an example of we could buck the trend with that, or that'll have to be a big round. But then Dream is, it's kind of a pretty safe bet, right? In that they're absolutely killing it at the moment. And so maybe that's not a super risky institutional bet. But that's what I'm seeing, that what hasn't yet picked up is that secondary funding where people have got money, they've gone for 2 years or a year, whatever, and now they need to raise again. And that's where we're seeing still kind of closures and cutbacks and layoffs where people, because if you're an investor right now, there's a lot of opportunity to invest your money. Do you want to invest? And it logically makes sense. I do a little bit of angel investing. I'm in a few companies, very small level. I'm not very wealthy at all, but in these things. But if you're given the choice, do you want to invest in something where they're looking for a couple 100,000 and you have a little bit of a stake that might be meaningful someday? Or do you want to throw millions into something where it's very small and the risk is higher? Games is a risky business always, and especially since all the recent changes. It's obvious that the money's going to get sucked into that early stage first. So I think it's a good sign that is happening. Sorry, I'm talking a lot. It's a good sign that's happening, and I just don't think yet we're seeing the secondary stuff. Dream will be interesting. The Grand Games thing was interesting, but again, that's Turkey, right? The Turkish ecosystem is kind of an entity in its own right, because there's a lot of very successful Turkish. Is it Laton? Is that the
Leighton Ventures, but I think that's actually technically that's based in the Netherlands.
Is it? Okay. Anyway, there's a lot of money that's come out of that explosion of casual and hyper casual in Turkey, which is then being kind of invested kind of back in, not just money from Turkey, but that is kind of like a micro kind of climate that's a bit separate from some other ones, I think. And in the same way that Finland has been and will be, when you've got the success of a Supercell and then Supercell has so much money that it can go and easily invest in all these other things, then that's kind of a micro, I don't know what the right word is, micro, I guess. It's a micro thing happening rather than the broader industry thing. But yeah, it's good news though. It's good news. It's good to see new stuff, new things starting. And there's a lot of people looking for, there's a lot of talented people out there, right? That have been laid off. I think it's like 40,000 people we've talked. It depends on the metrics you go. The last 18 months or so have been lost from the industry, maybe the last 2 years. That's huge, a huge amount of people, right? And they're looking for somewhere to go. So yeah.
So kind of following on from that, we recently did our developer trend survey, mobile game developer trend survey, winter 2024-25. Kind of take the temperature of the industry. Obviously, as we've been saying, 2024 and really the last few years been tough. And then we said earlier, well, from survive to 25 to kind of hopefully kind of thrive in 25. So I guess what does the industry really think? So I've got a couple key takeaways. I'll put a link in the description. Check out the full report. It's quite long. Like naturally, layoffs were high up on the list of key trends on Response's mind. The biggest trend of the year for the past year at 56.7% of those surveyed. That was above rising UA costs, App Store regulation, and the cross-platform shift. I actually found it interesting that web shops was down at 20, still reasonable, but down at 23.1%, and third-party payments 17.9. I thought that'd be a lot higher. I thought people would be well into that. And then a few other quick ones. Privacy changes and rising UA costs were highlighted as two of the biggest threats to the business, as well as high marketing and development costs, and a lack of investment. Hopefully, investment is improving. We have seen kind of something like quarterly growth already. And development costs has been a big topic of the year, particularly in kind of AAA console. We asked companies how many games they've released over the past 12 months, and just over 40% said none. The second most popular answer was one game at 22.2%. We've obviously seen, previously, famously, Playtika said they weren't going to release a game. And then now, I think they are back to that with Wooga. And Big Fish is no longer releasing games, but I think that's very specific to Aristocrat Leisure's strategy, and seemingly that they couldn't sell Big Fish. But despite everything that was kind of negative, the outlook for the mobile game sector is a positive one. I say that when the answer is less than half, but just over 44% of those surveyed had a positive to very positive outlook for the next 12 months. 34.3% were neutral, and then 13.4% had a negative to very negative outlook. So that's not quite the 75% positive outlook we saw in 2021, but it does show a more hopeful industry as you move to 2025. Chris, I don't know if you have any...
Yeah, sorry, I was listening. I was actually checking it out because I did some presentation slides for a couple of different things on this. I think, firstly, it's the best looking survey in the world. It's beautiful, very colourful. Good work, Jez and Paul. But yeah, no, it is interesting, isn't it? I used it as an example in my intro at London to sort of say, that most people think are neutral on whether the year will get better or worse. That was the best positive sign to come out of this, is everyone's a bit meh about the year ahead. But in reality, there is a lot of kind of interesting insight in it, and kind of some positive kind of angles. And like you said, I think it's interesting how things like kind of web shops stuff come up. I think it's interesting about kind of HTML5 or web-based gaming is an interesting thing. I think alternative app stores. I think that there are things that people come up that people are interested in, and generally, even though neutral was probably the biggest perspective on the next year, the negative bit was relatively low, right? And as you say, the good thing about that survey, one of the many good things about it, is it does these comparative things for the last few years as well, and you can kind of get obviously different people filling in. There's always some variance, but you can see. Negativity is definitely up against 2021. Last time we did it, we haven't done one during the...
I couldn't believe it was 75% were positive. I was like, what? But I'm too British to be that positive.
I know, but it's not just British, it's global, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing. But
but me personally.
I think generally, and it's interesting. We had people from all across the ecosystem: developers, publishers, tools, service people, investors, media, consultants, advertising, PR people, all sorts. So it was kind of an interesting, good cross section, and interesting. All different. I was interested in things like the different business models. It's a good survey, so do download it. It just, it doesn't necessarily going to shape your business decisions, but it's good to kind of get a sense of where other people are thinking. And there's a lot of what it said to me was that the broad sort of directions, the tendrils of our industry, and this is one of the reasons I'm kind of positive. There's a lot of different areas in which video games is kind of growing, whether that's geographically, whether that's new technology, whether that's going back to distribution platforms or monetization platforms. Whether it's people getting around the problems we had before, whether it's investment from different regions. This whole idea about investing in Asia or Asia investing in the West was one that came up as interesting terms. There was just a lot of different opportunities listed. I think there was about 20 that all had a meaningful kind of percentage. So it was kind of, that to me is good news. You don't want to, it's great to go, this is going to be the big trend of the year, but I'd much rather have like, 8 or 10 or 5 even micro trends that all are capable of growing the industry. And I think that kind of goes back to, which I won't go into detail, but goes back to Matthew Ball's 700-page tome, which, is interesting and definitely worth looking at. But, it is subjective like any bit of data, but, it's not, he's decided which bits of data to take and which conclusions to draw from it. But his whole argument is around growth engines and what are the engines of growth and what drove the incredible growth, particularly in mobile, but in the games industry as a whole. What then, how those ran out of steam and what new ones didn't kind of work. And that's a really interesting angle to think of. And I think one of the things our survey does show is there's a lot of potential growth engines that people are trying to pursue. And I think for me, some of those, I think, mobile UA seems to be getting back to us, not where it was, but they seem to have dealt with what's been thrown at them so far and found some sort of ways to work in that space and kind of create a bit more predictable growth again. And then the distribution is the huge thing for me, like whether that's different app stores, whether that's web shops. That different way of getting games out, entangled with that, in company with that, is the app store. The app store is the web distribution. It's like having games just straight in your browser or streaming onto your phone or TV from cloud gaming. I think there's a lot of things kind of happening that could drive the industry massively forward. I don't. This time we're not relying on things like esports, which I think was always a bit. No one's quite. It's an interesting space and there's lots going on, but is it actually really driving revenue from the industry, or Web3, which didn't really deliver? AR, VR, brilliant technology, and it's making steady progress, but it's not a mobile like big force. But that's what I took from the survey. I thought it was really good. So good job. I didn't do anything for it, so I just read it. It was really good.
But please do download it. There's it's not quite 700 pages.
Next year, Craig. Next year,
we hopefully it's like succinct to the point and really interesting kind of takeaways. So thank you for everyone, obviously, for filling that in. Very quickly, I do want to touch upon these. Actually, firstly, I'm going to quickly talk about the Amazon App Store. So it's to close on Android, set to close on August 20th. A notice to developers went out and a new support page said they can no longer submit new apps and they're discontinuing the coins program. I forgot even what that existed, to be honest. But anyway, the point is going to continue on like Amazon Fire devices. But the point to me, and kind of extending on what you were saying about one of the growth engines and opportunities in alternative app stores, I wonder if that opportunity actually exists, because I think it's so incredibly difficult, I've said this before, to get people out of their habit of just using the App Store on Google Play. That's where everything's set up. That's just what they're going to default to. And I know Amazon, these big tech companies can just on a whim say, we're not going to do this anymore. They probably haven't invested in it for a long time. But I feel like it is a sign that it's a struggle for big companies. You've got Samsung and Huawei kind of offer shouts about how well it's doing. But ultimately, globally, it's just nowhere near the App Store and Google Play. And then like last week or the week before, I can't remember, we had Epic come out, and it's PC, but it's the same sort of situation. You're dealing with a monopoly with Steam. And third-party revenue was down year on year for the whole year. And it's like the amount of money they've invested in that, and is it going to get better on mobile?
I think I agree. There are big challenges ahead for alternative app stores, and I think it is a tough battle, especially on mobile, because your phone operating system runs the thing, and everything is geared towards pushing you towards that store, and to deter you, regardless of what people might legally try and enforce, to deter you subtly one way or another from going to another one. So I think that's different. I think that's tricky, and I don't think it's an easy thing. I think the differential, like maybe it is going to be a web experience, maybe it is web shops, maybe it's going to be, the problem is they can't even do price variance, obviously, with free to play games, really. So that's the challenge, and you get that kind of chicken and egg kind of situation where if the big developers don't really get behind putting offers or whatever on these stores to drive people in, then you don't get the masses, and then without the masses there, the big developers aren't interested. The counter I'd say to that is I think Amazon, it's not a great sign, but I do think Amazon's whole gaming strategy hasn't really worked, right? And I think the thing that's worked for them is Prime Video. That's been hugely successful. But gaming, even when you ever went to Amazon, it was always kind of hidden away. It wasn't easy to find. It wasn't like I don't know how the Amazon Music thing's going, but I know that games was always seemed to be a bit of an afterthought. Like we should be in games somehow. I know they invested a chunk of money. They bought the what was the development tool they bought?
Lumberyard.
Lumberyard. That was.
I've heard things about that.
That was something else, wasn't it? That was bought. That was another tool.
That was CryEngine.
CryEngine, yeah, they turned into Lumberyard. So that was interesting. But yeah, and then they had all these things tied in. Obviously, they had Twitch. They've got Twitch, which is a huge platform for gamers. The Space Bee kind of benefits there, and it never really ended up. And my son's really into Twitch, and he doesn't do anything. I don't know. It didn't quite work somehow. So I don't think we take that as the fact that Amazon just because for it to be interesting, it's so far from their core business that it's like, yeah, I'm not, I can't be bothered with that. However, the one thing I think you should look at is Flexion. Now, Flexion's entire business, and is taking big games, typically, or big games they can get, to alternative app stores, like not just one, to all of them, and they've been signing bigger and bigger players, people like King and sort of Band or whatever. They've been putting out release for release. Their figures are going up. So somehow something positive is happening in this space, but I guess it's probably still such a small percentage compared to the pie that's being generated through Apple and Google. And I think the other thing to say is that there is a bit of hostility, the open hostility towards policies and approaches from certainly Apple, I don't know Google so much, but is never been stronger than it is now. I remember when we start to get someone to say anything about Apple or whether question them, we wouldn't do it. Maybe behind closed doors, but don't report that. Right now, people are coming on panels to go, well, this is outrageous. We can't do this. Yeah. And so yeah. So I think there's challenges. I definitely agree, but I don't think it's over yet.
And then last one very quickly, but I have to mention it. So Supercell has revealed its latest game, Boat Game,
Boom.
Simply called. Alpha test is coming soon. In our story, it's like, I've watched the small trailer. There's not much detail, but there's like sailing boats. You're exploring an island, or at least walking on it. And then you're kind of engaging in shooter gameplay. It also has a MySpace page for some reason. The marketing is interesting. I'm curious.
Well, that's part of the marketing, right? That marketing was kind of part of this weird...
Yeah,
AI created. It was a very AI sort of zeitgeist thing.
I didn't really understand what was going on. Yeah, maybe that's the point.
I think Supercell. Yeah, I mean, Supercell game, great. They've announced it, and whether it will actually properly see light of day and survive for a long period, because the difference is Supercell's been doing this for years. It's just normally you wouldn't really know about it. They would do it under a different brand, under a different thing. And they test the thing somewhere, soft launch, and then they'd kind of, just quietly kill stuff off, right? And then they'd probably tell you it was killed off. But they've been doing this a lot, and I think, yeah, I think it looks interesting. They've got the same problem everyone else has in the mobile industry. Revenue drivers are the existing games, right? The big games. It's the Clash Royales. It's the Brawl Stars. It's the Clash of Clans, of course. And to a lesser extent, I guess, Heyday. And does Boom Beach still? I think Boom Beach.
Boom Beach Queen Estimates doesn't really do much at all. Heyday
got handed over to sort of to Space Ape for a bit, and then didn't, or something like that. But I mean, those are all billion, are huge games. But and I think they've had their best year ever. I think Brawl Stars and Clash Royale have had their best years ever. And these are games that are like what?
Brawl Stars, not Clash Royale.
Did Clash Royale have its best year? I thought it was.
So that every single game in their portfolio was up year on year.
Okay, maybe that's best.
Clash Royale's best was, I think, at the start.
Yeah, but I saw a really interesting talk in Robiocon from Clash Royale, and they're very bullish and a lot of interesting plans for the future. I still play that game now, and I think that's kind of the problem. So I don't know, I'm excited. The thing with Squad Busters, I kind of love Supercell. I love the people there. I love the games they make. I didn't get it. I just kind of played it and thought, this is bright, shiny, but what is the game here? I don't really. I'm doing it. I'm not sure I'm enjoying it. I'm not sure I'm getting any better or worse. But I just stopped playing it. And I think that might be the same. It didn't feel like the core loop made enough sense. I'm kind of with Brawl Stars. I'm a bit bad with sort of two thumb shooters. So my son plays it a lot. I'm not great with it, but I do get that at least. But I didn't really get Squad Busters what it was. I thought it was very glitzy and shiny and looked great, and production values were super high, and it was kind of fun. But I kept playing it and going, I'm unlocking new guys, but what am I really doing here? I don't know. I'm just kind of running around, and then sometimes I win, sometimes I don't. I don't feel I don't get what I'm doing wrong or right. it just wasn't. Yeah,
I'm curious
wasn't
if the
right.
lesson from that will be like back to what they used to do, just more longer testing, more testing. Will
I
they just
don't.
release a game like
Maybe,
that again?
maybe, but then they've put this out with a big, new boat game. They've put this out with a bit of not. They've not put loads of Hollywood stars in or anything, right? But they
Not
have.
yet.
I don't think though that if you look at what Supercell's achieved in the last year, I don't think they're going to be discouraged massively from thinking that the strategy they've gone down that's markedly different to what they did in the past is wrong. They had the best year, and they've now like 3 times the size they were, or something crazy like that. They've certainly twice as big in terms of staff, and their approach is just markedly different. And I think didn't they get the guy? I think the guy was on stage speaking at Robicon the year before, who was their new marketing guy. I presume he still is. He worked at Burger King or something, and it was big, brash marketing. It was crossovers with celebrities like the John Cena thing and SpongeBob in Brawl Stars was huge. Yeah, so I don't think they're gonna go quietly. I don't know what's happened with Moko, and I don't know.
Still
Where's that
going?
going now? I don't know.
They're still going, still testing. I think it looks quite interesting. I watched some gameplay. I didn't quite get it just from watching it, but I think it looks good. It looks
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, that's it. I think gameplay loop. Yeah, their polish is always good. Whether the gameplay loop is always,
Well, a lot of their games seem quite similar now. I would say there's they're multiplayer action games. Like that seems to be the road Supercell's got there.
yeah, and they're kind of leveraging a lot of the time the same characters, right? Their universe of characters, and I think this idea of a toy set of characters they can use in different ways is kind of seemed to be a theme that's going through the company, and I like that idea. And I'm waiting for the Supercell movie, whatever it is, the Clash movie. It's got to be. They've got to do. I mean, they've had the TV, they've had the little video shots where it wasn't TV, but it was on like YouTube, whatever. It was really professional. But like, surely they're looking at you've got Rovio and Sonic, Angry Birds, Sonic doing this. Surely they're going, well, we've got enough here to.
Is Barbarian
Strong enough?
as big as Red, as big as Sonic?
No, he's not. He's not. That's fair. I think Angry Birds was a genuine cultural phenomenon that went beyond. It had people in the went beyond anything. Right, that was the biggest. That it was Rovio and Angry Birds was our Sonic, our Sonic or Mario for the mobile. There's no doubt about that. And that was partly down to Vesta Backer and people and the great people at Rovio, dumb luck as well. But it just took on, and it became, you'd be playing on chat shows and stuff in America, and it was on the space mission. They did these kind of crossovers with Star Wars and various things, and it was great. But his question is Barbarian that big? No. So no. So maybe it shouldn't be moving. I don't know. I guess I'm someone that's vested in that space, and there's many millions of people that are vested in that. So yeah. I don't know, but I wouldn't say it's League of Legends. I mean, they did maybe it's the Netflix approach. They did that. I'm not a League of Legends player. I'm aware of what it is, obviously, and I get it. But I still watched the TV show, and it was quite good.
Right, gonna wrap it up there. Thanks so much, Chris, for joining the show and for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime you want to elongate this for another 20 minutes, invite me on. I'm happy to join.
That was perfect, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you got any feedback, drop us a line, and check out links below for our survey and events. And we'll see you on the next show. Have a good weekend, everyone. Goodbye.